Welcome back to DPSN. I'm Dylan Oliver, and today I've decided I'm going to take a quick little break from my NFL record predictions and instead talk about one of my favorite things in the entire world, fantasy football. Specifically, my top 12 running backs for the upcoming fantasy football season. So, to kick things off, at my number 12 spot, I have running back Cam Akers from the Los Angeles Rams. Now, you might be asking yourself, why Cam Akers? And I'll tell you why. He's the clear number one running back on a very high-powered offense with the Rams headed by Sean McVay. And Sean McVay has been responsible for some legendary fantasy seasons out of running backs like Todd Gurley. Now, I'm not saying Akers is as good as prime Todd Gurley because that's nowhere close. But I am saying Cam Akers is the best running back Sean McVay has had since Todd Gurley. And I believe that Sean McVay knows this and wants to get Akers involved in the offense. As last year, Akers missed most of the entire season and returned really in that playoff run. And in that playoff run, Akers was averaging 19 touches per game for the 4 games of postseason. So, with that, he's my number 12 for fantasy football. Up next on my list, at number 11, I have Saquon Barkley. Now, I'm kind of iffy on this one myself, I'm not gonna lie. He has a new head coach who could try and hopefully bring him back to that 2018 production. But I mean, he just was not that great last year. He had injury concerns the past couple of years, and his efficiency was terrible. But I think the only way for him to go is up. His efficiency was near bottom of the league. There's no way he does that again. It has to improve this season. There's no real competition in that running back field for him on the Giants. It all goes through him. And last season, he did show flashes of greatness in weeks 3 and 4 before another injury in week 5, which really slowed his season down again. So he has shown flashes that he can still be that great 2018 version of himself. Because of his potential upside and potentially getting back to that previous self, I have to put him at my 11 slot. Now at my 10 slot, I have Aaron Jones. A lot of people, I think, don't believe too much in Aaron Jones this year, but I think he's going to be fantastic for fantasy football. He's been pretty durable over his last 3 years, as he's only missed 4 games in the last 3 seasons, and he's had 10 touchdowns in each of the last 3 seasons. Oh, not to mention, Davante Adams, the Packers' really number one receiving option, is gone, which gives a lot of targets available for everyone else, and I think Aaron Jones is going to be heavily involved in the passing game. I honestly could see him being more of a Deebo Samuel role for the Packers this year, where he plays a little bit outside at receiver and some running back as well. Since Matt LaFleur took over, in the 7 games Davante Adams has not played, Aaron Jones is averaging 26 points per game in those games Davante doesn't play. So, who knows? Maybe he can do that for a full season. I doubt it, but because of that, I have to have him up this high at my number 10 spot. Alright, at number 9 is Alvin Kamara. Now I know there's a ton of question marks surrounding him, but if those get cleared up, he's one of the safest and best fantasy running backs there is. He's facing a potential 6-game suspension, which is of course terrible, but he might not get suspended at all. It's still up in the air as of right now. Last season, he averaged 18.1 points per game, which is pretty good. He was a PPR monster. He is every year. All he does is get receptions. He is so involved in the passing game, which makes him so great for PPR leagues in fantasy. And if the news comes out that he's not suspended, then like I said, he's one of the safest running backs, as he has 5 straight seasons as finishing as a top 10 running back in fantasy football. If he ends up not being suspended, he'd be even higher on my list. At number 9 is a year 3 running back that I'm very excited for. It's Deandre Swift. Last season, he was fantastic. Overall, he was the RB5 last season before his injury occurred. And going into year 3, I believe the Lions are going to continue to try and run their offense through him and just have him be an absolute monster this season. At my number 7 spot, it's Joe Mixon, for a lot of reasons. Last season, he posted career highs in carries, rushing yards, receiving yards, and touchdowns. And not to mention, his O-line improved this season, which means his rushing efficiency should go up even more. Last season, he averaged 18 points per game. The only downside to him is he doesn't tend to be that every down back for the Bengals. They tend to go to Samaje Perine whenever they need to throw the ball, which I don't fully understand, but still, even with the lack of receiving game for Joe Mixon, he's a great back for fantasy, and of course is my number 7. At number 6, I have Dalvin Cook. Last season was a bit of a rough year for him. He only had 6 touchdowns, which is crazy because the year before he had over 16. So I truly believe his touchdown totals will come back up this year, therefore making him once again one of, if not the best running backs in all of fantasy football. And now with their new head coach as well, he does want to throw the ball a bit more, which means Cook can get involved more in the passing game, which means more receptions, which means more points for him in PPR. At number 5, I have Najee Harris. Last year, Najee Harris averaged 17.7 fantasy points per game, and he's extremely involved in this entire Steelers offense, receiving and rushing. The volume with him is absolutely insane. He gets so many touches. Last season, he had 381 touches. His efficiency was not the best as he had very low yards per touch, but I believe this year, without Big Ben Roethlisberger, those will increase, and if he gets around the same amount of touches, his yards and touchdowns are going to be through the roof this season, making him my RB5 for this season. At my running back 4, I of course have Derrick Henry. He's just an animal. Last season, he was averaging 24.2 points per game through the 8 healthy weeks he had. The only concern with him is he's now 28, coming off of a big injury, and he doesn't get too much work in the passing game. But at the end of the day, it is still Derrick Henry. The man had over 2,000 rushing yards not too long ago. He was on pace for it again last season before the injury. I wouldn't be shocked if he had 400 rushing attempts this season. So the volume he's going to receive, if he can remain healthy the whole way, he's going to be an absolute monster. PPR or not, he's going to be insane. At my number 3 spot, I have Austin Eckler. I love the involvement with him in the passing game. Last season, he averaged 21.5 points per game and had 20 total touchdowns. Like I said, he's very involved in that passing game where he has 70 receptions last season. Now, I do see him regressing a little bit this season with the addition of Isaiah Spiller, as well as I don't think he's going to be able to get 20 touchdowns again this season. So for that, I'm not going to put him at that 1 or 2 spot. He's going to be at my 3 just because last season was remarkable, and I don't know if he's going to be able to replicate those numbers. At number 2, I have Jonathan Taylor. He's just great. He's very safe as he missed 0 games all of last season. He averaged 22 points per game last season and has a fantastic offensive line. His one downside is he's not extremely involved in the passing game, so he won't get you all those crazy points for PPR, but his running volume is just insane. We all know the numbers in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns he was able to put up last year as he finished the RB1. This season, I just think there's one guy who's a bit better, and that is, of course, Christian McCaffrey. Now, I know he's so scary to draft and so risky, but if he's able to finish the season off healthy and play the majority of the games, he is an absolute fantasy god. He averaged 26.1 points per game in the last 8 healthy games he's played. He had 37 receptions in just 7 games last season. And not to mention, the last time he played a full season, he put up 469.2 total fantasy points. That's almost over 100 more than Jonathan Taylor did last year in his RB1 season. The injuries that McCaffrey has suffered haven't been repetitive. It's not like he's kept injuring the same ankle. It's been a shoulder or an ankle or a hamstring. They've never been the same. So that might consider him not injury prone, but overall, if you are playing against McCaffrey and he's healthy, you are terrified. You cannot deal with a healthy McCaffrey. He will win people leagues if he can just remain healthy. So I have to have him at my RB1 for this season. Well, those are my top 12 running backs for the upcoming fantasy football season. I'll be releasing my top 12 wide receivers coming up pretty soon, so make sure to subscribe and tune in for that one. But for now, I've been Dylan Oliver, and I will see you next time.
Bye.